Good evening. I'd like to reconvene the public session. How do you want to, we'll report out after we go back to closed session?
Mr. Mayor, if you're okay with it, I'll report out the first two items now.
Absolutely.
Went into closed session, discussed conference with real property negotiators and the two potential cases. No reportable action occurred. We were not able to discuss the third item, which is the last potential case, anticipated litigation. That item was moved to the end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Colin. I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and if you would remain standing for the invocation with Pastor Daniel. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, Pastor.
Thank you, sir. Let's pray. Almighty God, we thank you tonight for giving this great opportunity to our council members to gather today. We bless the name of the Lord, for you are God. You have promised that a nation is blessed whose God is the Lord. We are here to speak that blessing to our leaders, to our community, to our city, to our nation, and our state. In the name of Jesus, we pray today that you would give our leaders that Solomonic wisdom to come out with the decisions that would govern this city and our nation. In the name of Jesus, we pray today that you would come down and bring success for whatever our leaders are doing for this city, because you are the Lord God Almighty, in whom there is no shadow of turning. We bless the name of the Lord tonight. We continue praying for prosperity of our city, because promotion comes not from east or west, from north or south, but from above. We pray today that you would prosper our city in the name of Jesus, because promotion comes from above. We thank you tonight. We glorify the name of the Lord. Gone before your servants, our leaders today, and your name shall be exalted. In Jesus' name, we give you thanks. Let's say amen together. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. It's always good to see you. Appreciate you. Okay, I'd like to call on, we have a presentation or an introduction. I'd like to call on our Fire Chief Otterman. He's going to introduce us to a new guy.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the City Council. Great to see all of you. I've been out for a little bit, so this took a little time to get this together. He's actually been here for a couple months, but we're glad to have him. But let me read you his bio so you guys kind of know his background, even though some of you might know his background already. So Battalion Chief Tim Anderson has worked in CAL FIRE Riverside Unit for over 2 decades, working both Schedule A and Schedule B. He has gained progressive experience in emergency response, fire suppression, and operational leadership. As a firefighter, Tim was assigned to several stations, where he spent most of his time assigned to Station 1 at Paris headquarters and Station 16 in Jurupa Valley. As a fire apparatus engineer, he also worked at Station 10 in Lake Elsinore. In 2016, Tim promoted to fire captain, assigned to Station 47 in the city of Norco. During those 7 years, Tim valued his time advising Fire Explorer Post, acting as a liaison to Norco Animal Rescue team, attending community events, and assisting local community groups. These experiences helped him better understand and appreciate the unique needs of Norco community and its animal keeping lifestyle. In 2020, Tim was honored to be recognized as the City of Norco's Firefighter of the Year. Seeking to gain further experience, Tim transferred to the Paris Emergency Command Center in May of 2023 and served as the ECC duty officer. A few months later, he promoted to battalion chief, serving in Battalion 8 in Blythe, way out there. So after 2 years in desert communities, Tim was thankful for the opportunity to return to Norco, where he now serves as the battalion chief in Battalion 4. Throughout his career, Tim has had the privilege to work on major incidents and strives to keep learning, training, and contributing whenever possible. He holds several ICS positions in the plan section and is instructed on various cadres in the Riverside unit. Tim lives in Norco with his wife, Kelly. Where are you at, Kelly? and looks forward to continuing to serve the Norco community and its residents. So we are very excited to have Tim part of the community. He already knows this place like the back of his hand. So it took a little work to get him here. We've been talking for the last year and a half, like, okay, how can we get Tim back over here into Norco? So I'm excited to have him here because I know he's going to represent the city well and our department. So with that, Tim, if you have any words that you, I told you guys get your 50 questions ready for him?
We do.
Okay, all right. So let's give him a round of applause. Tim Anderson.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Mayor, City Council, City staff, glad to be back home in Norco, and I look forward to the opportunity of working with all of you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you,
That's
Tim. Chief. Chief Otterman, I appreciate all your help, and Chief Anderson, you got your work cut out for you. Does council have any questions or comments? I'm looking forward to you getting NARC up and going again, so.
Yeah, we do have another battalion chief, but he's been out injured pretty much
Correct.
since we got him. So, as soon as he gets better, we'll get him in here as well.
All right.
So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Nobody brought any cowbells. Were there? Oh. Okay. We're going to go ahead and start with City Council reports on regional boards. We'll start with Councilmember Bash. Good report. Thank you. Thea?
So September 25th, I went to the RTA board meeting, and I have kind of just a little bit of summary of everything in September, including some T-Now information. So ridership was actually down a little bit for August, which is not typical. But overall, the fiscal year, we are up as compared to the last fiscal year. Tomorrow is a free ride day on all fixed route and micro transit buses. So ditch your car and take the bus. It is the California Clean Air Day. And then a new app is going to be launching on October 5th for Dial a Ride. So that's going to be really handy for a lot of folks. And the board of directors awarded the installation of Wi-Fi routers on all Dial-A-Ride vehicles, which will be coming soon. So that's about RTA. And then yesterday, I attended the Riverside County Women's Leadership Conference, which was founded by Supervisor Karen Spiegel. It was incredibly inspiring. There were so many speakers, and it was, even though it was only maybe 4 or 5 hours, it was fabulous. And my big takeaways were that we need to lift each other up. That's how we strengthen our communities. And we should always be willing to step outside our comfort zones because that's how we grow. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Fia. Greg?
Well, the first one, on September 18th, the Northwestern Mosquito Vector Control. Really not a lot to speak of. We spent 2.5 hours in closed session. Went really well, but we didn't talk about anything other than closed session stuff, so can't speak on that. But on September 19th, I did go to the Mountain Enforcement Peace Officers Academy they have up there in Eagles Park. That's going on right now. They have peace officers from all over Southern California and Northern California, one from Nevada, or no, excuse me, 2 from Nevada. So we got sheriff departments and police departments from all over California. They have approximately 120 guys up there training, getting their post certificate to be able to ride their horses on patrol. And it's just phenomenal. Chad Bianco was there, the undersheriff was there, and police chiefs from Anaheim, Fullerton, and I know I'm gonna miss, there was so many dignitaries there, it was awesome. And it was great to see Jim Wagner was back, Rick Wagner was back. The old general, he was good to see. He told me to tell everybody hi. And it was really good. They have a really big class, and they're doing really well. And we represented Norco there, and it was really nice seeing how that arena is getting used for all kinds of different stuff, like mountain enforcement, canine, and like thinking outside the box. It's great to see how people from all over California is coming here, and when I was talking to them, they want to come here because we have an awesome facility. Thank you, Amanda. Thank everybody for what you do to be able to put that on. And that was one of the main things that everybody said, that, you know, the Border Patrol agents, the sheriff departments from different counties, the PDs from different counties, they just love coming to Norco because they can ride everywhere. They can ride from the park and go get something to eat. And nothing but 100% positive. But that's all I got, and thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Robin. And also, I have nothing to report on any regional boards. Start up tomorrow again. Okay, so Dana, public comments?
We have no public comments, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We'll move into the consent calendar. Does any council members have any items that need to be pulled?
Yeah. 3E.
E? E, is that correct, Greg?
3E.
All right.
Motion to approve the rest?
Second.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, item 3E. This is resolution 2025-61. Greg?
Well, what I'd like to, I think we need to spend a little bit more time to be able to help the city. I've been reading that stuff from top to bottom, and I didn't get through it. Not enough time. But I did have, there was like issues with like 18-4, the code of conduct. I was looking at, and there's no mention in there when it comes to, perfect example, we have people that have different color hair, and you know, they paint their hairs. Don't want to circle out and point my finger, but we had people that were in animal control and having bright red hair. I mean, it just doesn't look professional. And there's nothing in there that says we can stop them. Now, at the same thing, if somebody came to work with a mohawk, there's nothing in there that'll stop them from doing that, because there's nothing in there that I read. And mind you, I didn't read it. I was thumbing through it as fast as I could so I can get through it. But I just think we need to take a little more look so we can look more professional. And I haven't seen anybody with mohawks. I just bring that as an example. But I did have a lot of people that came up to me and they says, well, why is our animal control people wearing different color hair? And I'm just like, well, because we don't have nothing that prevents them from doing it. And it's just something I think we need to have a stronger look at. And we need to have something in there for a code of conduct with volunteers. I didn't read anything in that protects volunteers from being treated properly. And over the recent years, I have seen people not treat the volunteers of the city properly. And I've seen it firsthand. So it's not something I'm making up. It's something that I've seen that has happened through, and I don't want to get into the dirty laundry right here, right now, but that's something that we need to, there has to be a way that you treat all the volunteers a certain way. And I have, like I said, I've witnessed it firsthand. And that's something I think we should re-look into that and add that into it. And that's, and like I said, I just scratched the surface on it. And if there's something in there about, I know there's stuff in there for dirty clothes, dressing a proper, can't even talk. But there's nothing in there about how they can have different color hair, or if the hair's, you got hair hanging down way past that. I don't see that being an issue, but there's nothing in there for that. So if we have people that are showing up to work with different color hair, and it just doesn't look professional when we're sending them out on the streets to deal with the public. But that's my thoughts.
Do you care to make a motion?
I make a motion that we relook at it and add a couple more items to be able to safeguard and help the people of the city.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? And I don't know if this is a Lizette or Colin question, but number one, this is a negotiated item, correct? So if it goes and has any revisions, it has to go back to all associations, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then I guess my second question would be, there's no freedom of, I know in private organizations and private businesses, there can be limitations to freedom of expression and all of that. Does that apply to a government organization or no?
So government employees don't give up their freedom because they become government employees, but we do have a lot of the same rights that private employers do. It's somewhat constricted because they're working for a government agency, but I don't know that that goes all the way to hair color. I think we still have those same rules as a private employer, that as long as it is a neutral law that doesn't draw preferences based on protected classes, we can do it. But I'll have to look into it. As Councilmember Bowen was speaking, I was thinking to myself, that's something we'll have to look up. I think we can. I think we can have a neutral hair color policy that makes sense. I'll have to look it up, though.
Okay, so then just under discussion for the public and for my colleagues up here, the last revision of this particular policy, or the age of this policy, is from 1990. I have a concern with going back and trying to make revisions to this again and delaying this particular item over hair color for another, I would say easily 3 months. It's not going to be until after the first of the year because we would have to agree on changes. Those would have to go back, be worded correctly, go back to the associations and the employee groups, and then come back to us again for a vote, and you put in the holidays and all of the things in between. And I have a problem going back and making a change to a personnel policy and procedure manual for a single person or a single incident that probably could be corrected with a conversation or at least discussed with a conversation, but I don't know what our discretion is at that, so.
As the city manager pointed out, there is an out because our 18.4 says that the city's policy regarding attire and grooming is set forth in Administrative Policy 316. So if council wants, we could always approve the personnel policies tonight that have been met and conferred, and then just on Administrative Policy 316, we can meet and confer with the unions on that one item.
Okay, so we have a motion.
Under discussion, so in terms of the volunteers, this is for employees. Are we talking about how our personnel are talking to volunteers?
I would, like I said, I was reading in this and I didn't see a section in there for just a section that I did read was about our city employees volunteering. It was very specific on what they can do. They can't volunteer with the same,
Right.
Like if somebody works up there at the Ingalls Park, they can't volunteer up there. They can volunteer, in other aspects. I get that, but it doesn't have a code of ethics for treating volunteers a certain way. And dealing with volunteers pretty much my whole life, there is a code of ethics. The sheriff department has it, the fire department has it, our sheriff's department in San Bernardino has it, and I think it would be nice to even add another one to it, a separate, addenda to that, to be able to, when people come in and complain, they have the same, they can complain about, being mistreated, and I have seen it. It's not bad. But what I have seen has not been good. And it was something I was looking for, I didn't find. And I thought maybe we could put something in there to help out the volunteers so they have an avenue to where they have one, but there's nothing, there's nothing in here that will say, okay, well, if you treat somebody, a volunteer, bad, what's going to happen? Nothing.
So, Colin, can we treat this the same way we're looking at the hair color issue? Just pull it out and treat the volunteer situation differently? Because I'm like Robin, I'm hesitant to hold this up.
We do have the council ethics policy that the council adopted a bit ago, and it does talk about treating each other with respect. What we can do is look at that policy, and if it doesn't include or apply to volunteers, we can add it to that policy.
But I think he's talking about the staff, how they treat volunteers.
Yeah, that's true. Then that would be a admin policy of the city manager generally.
And employees are required to follow our ethics policy as well, so we could look at that to just make sure it includes not only staff as well as volunteers.
Does that work for you?
I don't know, honestly.
And I do want to, with our volunteers, that's mentioned here, the reason is why you can't be an employee and also volunteer within the city is because of regulations to pay that employee. So they're considered an employee regardless.
Yeah, I get that. That's not the issue I was going after. There's just, you have that, but you don't have anything for regular people, this regular city people that live out there that are volunteering. And I look at it, this is a way to help protect them, to not get, and I don't want to hit on it too hard, because what I have seen in the past, it's basically, they just don't treat them well. And I don't want to go up here and start throwing names, because it's no longer an issue with those people anymore. But I would like to have something in there that would say, hey, look, this is what you can do. You can come in and complain. And that, so we can go back to our code of ethics and say, okay, well, you violated this on the volunteer thing. And so now we can write you up, other than just write you up for something somebody said, because you didn't follow this. So it just, I think if we're gonna do the same thing for 18-4 and hold it out and rewrite that and put it back in, we could have an 18-5, or I'd have to look and see what the last one is and add one more. We can add one more.
May I?
Yeah.
So in our administrative policy, we do have a section for code of ethics for employees. So just like the reference of the dress code, we could also review that. I
Okay.
just don't know the number off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So clarification on the motion is to amend the administrative policy that is approved by the city manager and not the personnel manual. Is that where?
Correct.
My understanding of that would be direction to staff. They're not doing that tonight, obviously. What is in front of council tonight is whether or not to approve the personnel policy, or whether
Okay.
council wants to take some different direction. So what I'm hearing is approve the personnel policy. Staff will work and make sure that we cover all of Councilmember Bowen's concerns using administrative policies, or if we can't do that, we'll have to meet and confer on a new policy and a new section of the personnel manual.
Lisette, I have a question. Or maybe it's Councilmember Bowen. What hair colors will we allow?
Natural. I mean,
I'm out.
well, I mean,
So-
if
Me too.
you go out, you have somebody go out and they're coming to your doorstep and they got purple hair, or if they have bright red hair, I mean, there is a point that it's just not professional. And, you know, blonde, black, I mean, my wife dyes her hair, Robin dyes, everybody dyes their hair, but it's
It's fair, I teach high school, I get gray hair, so yes, I dye my hair.
well, I don't. I leave mine naturally gray. But what I'm getting at is we start having all these odd colors of people wearing their hair. And the only reason I'm saying this is because it's been mentioned to me numerous times. And I've set it up here about the people that are out there. And nothing happened. Because now that I read this, there's nothing in there to be able to hold them accountable for not having, you know, psychedelic color hair. I mean, you know, it'd be something that you could write up to where it's up to, you know, Lizette, as far as, you know, what appropriate colors, you know, natural colors, you know, neutral colors. But if somebody comes in with bright pink hair or purple hair or red hair, it's not professional. And they're dealing with the public, and that's what I'm getting at.
Dana, we have a motion.
I still just want to clarify. I don't feel, I have motion to approve the personnel policy as presented and directing staff to review admin policy and return with changes. I'm still not getting that last piece. It's getting muddled.
We'll review admin policies to address Councilmember Bowen's concerns.
Okay.
And we'll return if any changes need to be made that can't be made at the administrative level.
Okay. I have no second.
It's just a motion right now.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Hearing no second, I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2025-61.
Second.
Please vote. And motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Dana. We'll move to discussion items 5A. This is going to be on our city weed abatement program. And this item was brought up by Councilmember Bash.
Correct.
And Lisette, your turn.
Weed abatement? I brought that up?
Yes, you did. Both of them, Kevin.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. We're here to discuss and provide direction on the city's weed abatement program. On September 3rd, City Council directed staff to place a discussion item on a future agenda to review our existing weed abatement programs. The city currently has weed abatement through 3 primary efforts. One's through CAL FIRE Riverside County Fire Department's tumbleweed abatement program, code enforcement, and our fuel modification in our LMDs and park open spaces. Our weed abatement procedures are guided through our Muni Codes, chapters 6.22, 9.4, and 9.65. As part of CAL FIRE Riverside County Fire Department, their weed abatement program is focused on vacant parcels to reduce our fire hazards. Inspections occur twice a year. Property owners receive notifications before the inspections. As for our code enforcement division, they focus on our private property abatement process, and code enforcement is the one that handles the developed properties through notices and escalates fines up to $300. Our facilities and maintenance is responsible for our fuel modification. We currently have 5 LMDs and that fund the public landscaping and slope maintenance with strict boundaries, and private property is excluded from that. For this, I will hand it over to Amanda to discuss the CDF with our cruise impact of the closure of CRC.
Good evening, Council. Yes, with the closure of CRC, it means that we will have the loss of our CDF crews, which currently, right now, we pay about $230 a day in the amount for about 11 to 15 crew members. It's a significant cost savings that we have had. Now, with the loss of them, we're looking at a potential of $1,000 an acre just to clear some of the open space that we do have in our LMDs and in our public open spaces.
We do have all 3 departments here if you have any questions of staff.
Okay, thank you, Lisette. Does council have any questions of staff for clarification of this item? Hearing no questions. Dana, do we have any public comment?
We have no public comment for 5A.
Okay, thank you. Council discussion. Councilmember Bash, start with you.
So, in essence, the issue, as I recall, seems like 1,000 years ago, is that the gentleman was concerned that he couldn't afford, or was concerned with a neighbor that was not taken care of. He had gotten a notification, but he felt that the properties were interconnected, correct? That was the issue. So.
Yes.
So the problem is, I guess when somebody turns you in, that's how we do enforcement. And it's the luck of the draw, but is there some way that we can work around this? Is there some way we can help with this? I mean, one of the things that I just came home to me is we're losing the CDF crew. That's huge. I'm not sure how to, I mean, I understand the code, but I also understand that some neighbors have some large swaths of land that they're having to take care of, and they're bothered when their neighbor doesn't get caught the same way.
Well, if I can,
Yeah.
some of what I recalled about that discussion, Kevin, was it's properties in the hills and they have the slopes, right? And so they have that natural vegetation up there, and my understanding was that it had to be cleared. I know, like, if I've driven up Hidden Valley or different areas in the hills, for me, you see a yard where they've got the natural vegetation, and then you see one that's been cleared, and I personally don't like seeing just big areas of dirt up there. I have concerns about that for multiple reasons: wind and carrying the soil off, and wind erosion, rain erosion, all of those things. And our municipal code is not clear, in my opinion. It defines weeds as anything that, like a weed which bears seeds of downy or wingy nature, like any brush or weeds which attain such large growth as to become, when dry, a fire menace to adjacent improved property. Weeds which are otherwise noxious or dangerous, poison oak and poison ivy. And I have a concern about saying, if your neighbor calls you in, you've got to clear your slope. It doesn't make sense to me at all. And I know we'll probably get into this discussion a little bit with the next item, or the fire code as well. But, if we can clarify, hey, if you've got tumbleweeds stacked up, right? We all know that is a huge fire hazard and an issue. And if there's some way we can be proactive, code enforcement in this town has always been complaint driven, and it's just not a good way to run code enforcement. So, and if we went to where everybody, you got to clear your slope, we're going to be making a mess for ourselves come rainy season. So I don't know if the code needs more clarification, and we need to maybe drill down to be a little bit more specific on, we really don't want people to accumulate tumbleweeds, for example, or something like that. So that's just my 2 cents.
Well, then maybe let's just cut to the chase. Maybe what needs to happen is we need to send this to, maybe there's an approved irrigation / certain kind of plants that somebody can plant that would be approved, that would not be a fire hazard. Maybe something like that. Because it is a problem. I mean, some of these people there's some people up there have huge areas that it would be very expensive, and they probably would be better off in the long run putting in an irrigation system or growing some sort of a natural plant that's not conducive to fires, if there is such a plant. I'm sure there's evergreens. Robin, you'd know more about that. Are there plants that?
Well, there's natives that you can plant, but part of our code talks about that the problem with it being declared a nuisance says overgrown vegetation on site, and this says it in several places in the code, likely to harbor rats, vermin, and other nuisances. Well, that's going to be anything you grow in Norco. Yeah, so I go back to the code, and I'm not happy with what's written in the code, because you could plant lantana, for example, low-lying, would hold the slope in place. Of course, the rats and the rabbits and the raccoons and the possums and all the things are going to live in there. That's the nature of where we live.
So what department would we send this to if we wanted to get some revisions in your spare time?
Let me ask.
Yeah.
If I could. Amanda, so, and Kevin, what you're saying, I understand, like with slope stabilization, but in our LMD areas, say up on Crestview, you know, going up to Valley, that we got some really big slopes that we irrigate,
Correct.
correct? And I'm just scared to ask if we have any idea of the cost impact to irrigate slopes, and I wouldn't want to put that burden on a property owner to say, you have to irrigate your slopes and have certain plants or things like that.
That Crestview slope where they call it the crow's nest up there,
Right,
those two houses, very expensive to maintain and very expensive to irrigate. We are currently looking at replacing that acacia because it is so high, and we're looking at a substantial amount of money to replant that. And we have pumps too. We have pumps for irrigation for that slope. It's a massive slope, and the LMD residents do pay for that slope.
I'm not suggesting that we do that, but are we referring to the two houses that weren't supposed to be built up there if they blew off the top of them ridge line? Is that the ones we're referring to?
That is correct,
That you
Kevin.
hung out the window? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that, with Kathy, when those were supposed to be one-story homes. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Have you looked further into it about what type of plant you're looking to replace that with?
I think we were looking at the acacias. You know, we did adopt the California Native Drought Tolerant Plant policy this last year. So we are currently we're working with design engineers, landscape engineers on what we can do to stabilize the slope, and how we would do that if we would do it in phases. So we're currently getting cost estimates for that.
I'm kind of leaning at this point to say that this is something that staff can look into with their, wherever it fits with the work schedule, but maybe bring in community development, specifically code enforcement, and maybe there's a better way to modify the enforcement code on it. And then, I guess in your staff meeting, right? You know, input from fire, from community development, facilities.
I mean, rather than stripping, maybe they have the option to plant and do it on their own so that they can.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not advisable, just take it down to dirt. I'm Robin on that, that's.
So I have a clarifying question then. It talks about if it's a code enforcement issue, it has to be designated a public nuisance, the weed issue that's going on, correct? For it to be a code enforcement issue?
Could I ask our code enforcement supervisor?
Sure.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Good.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify real quick. I know that the code is written kind of wonky, I understand that. There's a spirit in the letter of the law, and what we are doing is not requiring people to clear anything because of erosion control. We understand that those slopes need to be stabilized. There's a lot of wind here. During the rainy season, we need those roots to keep that soil there. And so what we do ask the residents is to cut down whatever vegetation they have. Usually it's California native, and they do that for a reason. They're doing it for drought control. Water's expensive. They don't want to have to irrigate all that. And so we have them cut it down to lower than a foot. And it's their choice. If you want to go down to the ground, that's your choice. But we only require you to go down to under a foot. And that way, it helps the neighbors feel more at ease, feeling like if it did catch fire, it wouldn't be some huge flame that's going to jump to a palm tree and cause an issue, that it's going to stay relatively low. Because all these complaints are fire fear driven, which is understandable. And I did speak to the staff about, it's not weeds, it's vegetation. Because overgrown or dry because you can have California native plants that aren't dried out and dying. You can. But a lot of people, you know, they don't because it's expensive. And that's fine. If you don't want to water them, that's fine. Just keep them cut down so that should somebody flick a cigarette, something happens, it lights up, it's not a catastrophe. That's able to, the fuel doesn't go up past a certain, I'm not a firefighter, but that was the concept that I'm trying to get into the officers.
Well, maybe we can address that when we go into the discussion on the fire code. From the code enforcement standpoint of that, and going back to the last council meeting where the resident, there was obviously a complaint, you know, filed against a certain property, and then you always have that comparison, well, my neighbor is just as bad, right?
Correct.
Is there a better way to deal with that? I mean, it just understanding it's complaint-driven, but when you go out there, and I know especially in Norco, you have to keep the blinders on. And
Right.
yeah.
So with that particular case, all of the houses kind of on that street all had the same issue.
Correct.
And once a case is opened, I can't really talk too much about it because it's confidential. And what I could not tell that resident was that there were cases. I didn't tell him specifically, but I said there are many cases on your street. It's not just you. But he really felt like I wasn't telling him the whole truth because I couldn't give him the addresses.
Sure.
And I said, how about you give me a list of addresses that you feel that need to be addressed, and we will put our whole staff on it, and we will address them all. And he just really didn't want to do that either. Now, when it comes to, we have that problem where it's like, okay, this person has weeds. At what point are you just creating more issues in the neighborhood, right?
Correct.
So I've kind of narrowed it down to things in the public row. If I'm driving to a residence and there's an issue with something in the row, and there's other neighbors in that neighborhood that have that same issue, but it's in the city property, I will address it because it's on my way and it's something I've seen, and that's city's property, which is part of our responsibility. If it is not a health and safety issue and it's on private property, we're leaving it alone until there's a complaint. One, just because there's so many cases that we're trying to catch up from the past. Maybe we might be a little more proactive in the future. I don't know how the council wants to take that. But once you start getting into, kind of the rule of thumb is when you go to a house, if house A has a basketball thing, okay, that's not a code, and there's 4 around it that you can stand there and look, you would usually open a case on those 4. But it's a slippery slope. And if the council doesn't want that type of code enforcement, we're not gonna do that type of code enforcement. But we always offer them the opportunity, like, tell us addresses and we will definitely look into them.
Okay, thank you.
But I do want to reiterate, we want people to keep their, I agree with you. We want people to keep their soil. We don't want it blowing around. These natural vegetation, it's important to the property owners, and it needs to be available to keep the property in check as far as erosion control, but also visually, when you have dry slopes like that, where it's just no vegetation, it's ugly. It's not visually pleasing.
So I guess can I ask a question real quick, Mr. Mayor?
Certainly.
So I guess that takes me to the question I was gonna originally ask. Is every complaint valid, or is there an opportunity for code enforcement to say, thank you for your complaint, but it's unfounded because it's not a violation of our code, and while you might not like looking at it, or you might be concerned about a particular hazard, what you perceive to be a hazard, that it's not an issue, and we're not gonna address the complaint?
Yes, just because somebody complains does not mean that it is a valid complaint, but we look into every complaint. So we will open a case on the complaint, and we will inspect and investigate the complaint. And a lot of them are unfounded. And I will usually reach out to the reporting party and let them know we are considering this unfounded because the code states this and it does not support, da-da-da-da. You may not keep your yard this way. However, there's nothing that says that he can't we don't have HOAs. There's nothing that says that they can't have their yard. It's just, it's a like-dislike thing, and I'm sorry you dislike it, but.
Okay, thank you.
You know, with that, and maybe as a staff discussion, that in our areas where we do fuel modification, that we have certain standards that we set, correct? And maybe those are the standards that we use in the open space areas for fuel modification that we use on these slope properties.
Correct.
Kind of one in the same.
Yeah, and that's included in the report. You know, when we do fuel modifications on Vandermolen or up by Mount Shasta, you know, we are not removing the native plants. We're just removing the dead material underneath them that is flammable, because we do worry about slope stabilization. So we are keeping those native shrubs and any ground cover that is there. And so we could work with staff on that and our policies and what's worked with us in the past.
Yeah, I think that should be the standard that we would use.
And that's very doable.
Yeah,
We just have to, if that's.
since we already have it.
If we want the standard, let's put it in writing and we will keep the standard. Anything else?
No, thank
Okay.
you. Is there any other discussion on this?
No, I'm pretty I really appreciate the clarification. So I'm pretty confident that somebody wasn't singled out. I'm pretty confident that, given what you've told us, that it seems like we're on top of it. Maybe just keep an eye on it, Amanda, I guess. You know, unfortunately, we kind of knew when they allowed all those properties to have those big expanses, we knew at the time there was going to be problems 20 years ago. So I don't see a solution, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I think this is something, considering workloads, that staff would do this, but, and maybe try to look at the code enforcement portion of that in relation to, like, with the fuel modification, and maybe it can be modified in that policy, but not, I want to make this more of a receive and file, I think, for direction to you. It's not.
It'll be added to our unofficial pending list.
Okay, there you go. So could we just take this as a receive and file with direction?
Yeah.
And we'd be clear enough on that? I'll make a motion to receive and file.
Second.
Please vote. Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to item 5B. This is a discussion, once again, on minimum setback requirements for uncovered horse corrals. Lisette, would you like to start this off?
Yes. So on September 10th, the Planning Commission meeting members discussed the setback requirements for uncovered corrals. Public comments were made that included some concerns regarding the 5-foot setbacks would further restrict the use of animal keeping, especially in those non-conforming size lots in the city. Also, the difficulty with currently the pre-existing structures that are in place in citywide, and also the difficulty if this does become something, is how to enforce it, how do you determine whether it was there prior or after the fact. Currently, there is nothing in the municipal code regarding uncovered corrals. There is a muni code reference where covered corrals, a certain size, are exempt from permit requirements. However, even if they're not to go through the permit process, they do have the requirement for the covered corrals to be 5-foot setback from the property line. With that, Planning Commission did the discussion, heard public comments, and they did recommend to bring to council a recommendation requiring that the uncovered corrals also have the 5-foot setback requirement.
Thank you. Does council have any specific questions of staff? No questions? Dana,
Yes,
any public comments?
we sure do. First speaker is Bonnie Slager.
Hi, Bonnie.
Good evening, everybody. I have 3 things that you might think about as you evaluate this. And the first one is the topic of stallions. And that's been a topic for 20 years or more. I believe, Kevin, you were on a ad hoc committee of some type with Linda, and you gave me your notes and so on. Twice I've had an issue with stallions next to my property. Actually, the third one was fine, but 2 times. And the stallions both times got hurt because of improper situation. A 5-foot setback on each side would have taken care of that. The other thing is the concern of spreading diseases, where a lot of diseases for equines are airborne, flyborne. There are diseases that are spread by nose-to-nose contact, such as the equine herpesvirus. And also the issue of injury when the horses at different properties get too close together. The injury at the Planning Commission meeting, the owner of Leaps and Bounds spoke about how her animals had gotten injured, and she'd even had a vet call because of the last time you allowed the extra horses on the property next door to hers, and she had had problems because of the horses being right on the property line. So with the stallion issue, spreading diseases and injury, I want you to consider the Planning Commission recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Our next speaker is Bill Naylor.
Evening, Bill.
Evening, Council. I'm going to take a little bit of different track on the previous speaker. As indicated, we've got a lot of non-conforming pieces of property. A lot of them are very narrow, and we start taking away the side yards and such for animals to be able to have that. We're going to really start cutting down on where we can put our horses. I really like to think that most of our horse people have some good common sense and know what they should do in distances. On one side of my property, we do have a distance of almost 8 feet from the neighboring horses because their horses are in and out routinely. We don't know what the vaccination thing is, so we do, on our own, give us some distance. But on the other side of our neighbor on the other side, we know what they do with their vaccination, and we know how they take care of the horses, and we're not worried about the horses being right on the property line. Also, what about properties that have a solid block wall or fence? Are we just going to take away all the property that we can't have animals on anymore? There's just so much. I really hate to see us start looking like Orange County or LA. It just, we're Norco, we're animal friendly. We want to keep it that way as much as we possibly can. And one last thing, are we going to just restrict it to horses? What about in our front yard where dogs come right up to the fence on the trail and are barking and charging the fence? Or why don't we put a 5-foot setback on them too? It's just all kinds of things that we're going down a slippery slope. We need to be careful. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
We have no further comment, Mayor.
Thank you, Dana. Okay, we'll bring this back to council for discussion and action. Can I start with a question, if I may?
Yeah.
Going over my list. So when this was brought up, there's, in the background, it currently no setback requirements in the code for uncovered corrals. Would you know, what are our setbacks then for covered corrals? Is that also
The covered one
zero?
does.
Or,
No, the covered corrals has a 5-foot setback requirement.
I don't,
Corral, it's the cover itself.
Let me pull it up.
yeah, would you, and I know this is not your expertise on this, so, yeah, that was one that just popped in my mind. It was just that, I know we're like 35 feet from dwellings and things like that. And you can come back to it if you'd like. It was just part of this discussion. Kevin, you want to start?
Yeah, so my understanding is that we changed the code. It used to be you could put a cover for a horse corral right next to the fence. The problem was it would then, if you had a slant, it would literally run the water right over the fence, and we no longer allow that, is my understanding. Now, the problem I'm having with this is, one, you can't enforce it. I mean, you'll have neighbors fighting neighbors. Right now, we have already got neighbors upset with the fact that, you know, somebody uses a common fence to corral their horse. So they have that, you know, that boundary line, and they use that as the fourth fence. I kind of agree with Bill because and yet at the same time, I know that Bonnie has said that she's had 3 incidents, but anybody who doesn't know how to keep a stallion, and we've always had that in Norco, but generally speaking, most people know how to keep stallions. I just think it'll be an enforcement nightmare. And what do you do? Like I used my own property. My property, I have one side, actually, I do have corrals that are 5 feet from the property line, but the only way I can prove it is by showing somebody my survey. So does somebody have to show a survey? Most of the medallions are gone. I mean, the properties were all surveyed between 1923 and 1939. And so you would have to spend a lot of money to prove, or it just seems like we're going into something that really needs to be a civil matter in some ways. If you're having trouble with somebody that has a horse that goes crazy, I don't want a horse to get hurt, but it's kind of a civil issue. So I just have difficulty pulling back the end of a corral or the side of a corral or whatever to that 5 feet. I mean, it sounds good, but practically speaking, I'm just not sure how it's going to work.
Fia?
While I do understand the intent of it, I do think that it is going to be unenforceable. That being said, I also think this is something that neighbors that have been just working it out themselves. I mean, I've had experiences with where it wasn't so great, where horses came through the fence and were on my property, and luckily nobody got hurt. I almost got hurt because I almost got ran over, but my horses were safe. But again, that just goes into having to work with your neighbor and have them get better fencing. I personally have 2 wires of hot wire, top and bottom, to keep my horse off the fence. But it is an issue. And I don't know how we can really enforce it other than making it to where if these horses were doing such damage and being a potential hazard to health and safety, making it a public nuisance. Because then in actually putting that into the code, because that would be some kind of tool that code enforcement could use. Because with my experience, having the horses come through the fence, I would have had to have called animal control, but that doesn't really fix the problem. I still would like to think that neighbors will just work it out that way, but the only real solution I could think of is maybe putting something into the code where it falls under a nuisance. But the actual 5-foot setbacks, I don't really think they're reasonable. I think it's a hardship on several levels, so.
Okay, thank you. Greg?
Let me put it into a little bit of perspective. From that wall to that wall, plus 10 feet is my property. You take 5 feet off of that one and 5 feet off of that one, you put a 24 by 24 on that way, I won't be able to turn my trailer in my backyard. I have went out and spent extra money and put the 6-foot tall wire weld so the horses, they still can go over it. But that is a neighbor issue. We've put hot wires up there because their horses run in their backyard, which is awesome. But they come over and they play, and not that they're studs, they just play. But back in the 60s, 70s and 80s and 90s, you look at how Norco's changed. And Bill made a comment. We're gonna keep tacking stuff on for people that have horses. And for us to keep Norco, we gotta draw the line somewhere. I mean, we have narrow lots. And you're basically restricting those people. And yeah, in a perfect world, it'd be great. If I had a big, humongous 2-acre lot, I would have no problem putting 5 foot because I got plenty of land. But, you know, back when I was growing up here, you didn't have to have a permit to get an ag building. You just put up a pole barn. Nobody cared. But we put restrictions after people with animal keeping, not knowing what the consequence, it just restricts people from being able to afford animals because now it's more cost effective. It's gonna cost more money to bring those stalls away from the fence. And I'm speaking of firsthand because mine go up next to the fence because I can't turn my trailer around my backyard if I bring in another 5 foot. I have a gooseneck. And it just wouldn't be possible. And if we pass it, I'd have to. But then my property is not even worth, if you've seen how narrow my driveway is, I'm 9 foot to get a living quarters horse trailer down the side, and I love my house. Wouldn't live anywhere else. But then I can't get my trailer in my backyard if I back in because it's impossible because it's a telephone pole. What you're doing is, if we pass this, I would have to spend hours and hours with somebody backing my trailer in my backyard because I wouldn't be able to pull around my backyard. Or it just wouldn't be feasible. And I think to keep Norco, I think I don't think we should do it. And because yes, it would affect me. If it did pass, I'd have to comply to it. But how many more restrictions are going to be putting on people with horses or animals? You know, is that going to apply to goats? Is that going to apply to cows? Cows aren't as tall. You know, it's, oh, well, they won't reach over, but they still could spread disease. I mean, you could add all that. Where are we going to stop? It's just something I think we just, like Kevin said, leave it up to the homeowners. Everybody has insurance. And when you look at the bottom line, animals are property. And let the homeowners insurance that people have, let them deal with it. I don't think we should do anything with it.
Thank you, Greg. Robin?
I am not in favor of the minimum setback. I know we've been talking mostly about horses, but it just talks about horse corrals or corral fencing, so speaking to other agricultural animals. And at the end of the day, animal owners are responsible for their own biosecurity practices, which means how you're going to keep them, where you're going to keep them, and what measures you'll take on your own property to keep your animals protected. And then, like I've said before, agriculture is it's a risky business. It doesn't matter whether it's plants or animals or whatever. There's inherent risk in being an agricultural community. So people need to take responsibility for what they have on their property and what they're going to do. So that's all.
Thank you. So we're planning, was coming from on this. I got a couple of different lenses to look in this that I'll classify this as enforced neighborliness. In other words, it's kind of the HOA mentality. And I think it goes back, Fia touched on it, is just being good neighbors. And if you have a problem, you work it out and you communicate. If not, you move to the next step. You know, we all treat our animals or our properties a little bit differently, depending on the animals we have. You know, some of my corrals are, you know, offset from property line so that we can get behind there and clean them and weed eat and things like that. But where I have a wood fence, those SOBs, they chew that thing no matter what I do. So it's, you know, giving up on the hot wires. So everybody's different, but it's how you work it out on your own. But what I wanted to ask council was, this issue also came up when we had, from the other week, the conditional use permit. When there's specific cases where there's discretion allowed on a CUP, should we look at offset of property if it's a conditional use permit on arenas? Considering that one that we heard where,
Commercial-wise, you're going to have a bigger piece of property. And I agree with you. I mean, you're moving horses in and out, and I agree with you.
yeah, or let's say a boarding facility.
Correct.
Where there were neighbors that brought up concerns in public on that. And would we or should we consider this on a conditional use permit to have a setback on arena covers?
Arena covers or
corrals or whatever. Kind of basing on the discussion from a few weeks ago.
If I remember correctly,
where it's a discretionary.
his new site plan, he moved it, didn't he? If I remember correctly.
Correct.
So,
Right. And then I have a problem with arbitrary numbers. You know, it's like, is property line fine? Is it 1 foot? Is it 2 foot? Is it 3 foot?
you're going to have people that just aren't going to like having a boarding stable next to them. I mean, there's a lot of issues that come into play on this.
Right.
I don't know. I just, again, I think a lot of it has to do with neighborliness. You have to, if my neighbor came to me and said, hey, I need you, I'm having this problem, I'd fix it. You know, that's what you do because it's not worth the hassle. I would like to correct one thing just so everybody knows. Your homeowner's insurance does not cover equine issues. You have to have a specialized insurance regardless. The other thing is we're one of the few states that doesn't have a statute that says if you get hurt on a horse, you knew you were riding a dangerous animal. California doesn't have that. So I heard you say, and a lot of people think their homeowners will protect them. They will not at all. Just wanted to make sure that you knew that, because a lot of people go, oh, my horse killed somebody, and all of a sudden they're on the hook. I don't know, you know, for me, I just think leave it and just be neighborly.
Well, That's the way I lean, but I'm just curious what our thoughts were on, on the conditional use permit.
Well, conditional use permits are discretionary, and so if we wanted to put additional restrictions, I would say that that would probably be something
If
that the
it
council
warranted.
could decide if it
Yeah.
warranted it while the discussion was taking place, up here, because they're asking for something above and beyond
Correct.
what is allowed by code.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
All right. Well, I guess the recommendation, no direction. We'll just, no minimum setback requirements.
Okay, that's
Or
fine.
Would you like to word it better? Yeah, well, there's no direction regarding the minimum setback requirements for uncovered horse corrals / corral fencing.
Yeah, you're just providing the recommendation to discuss and provide direction regarding minimum setback requirements for uncovered horse corrals and corral fencing. So your motion is to set no minimum setbacks requirements for uncovered horse corrals and corral fencing.
If I could recommend, we just do a motion to take no action. That way.
I'm better with that. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, no action is the motion.
Do I have a second? Please vote. And motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead into our public hearing for the evening. The order of presentation will be a staff report, council questions to staff. We'll open and close the public hearing, and council discussion and action. And this is the first reading, ordinance number 1135. Michelle? Good to see you again.
Good evening, council and mayor. Tonight, I'm going to talk about the fire code and the wildland urban interface code. As you may or may not know, the code gets adopted every 3 years, and before we officially adopt, we make any amendments and changes to it. All right, so first up, the amendments to support community safety and resiliency. That's why we do this. We want to provide consistency throughout Riverside County, so we try to get on the same page while also having local ordinances and ensuring local control. So the first section in the fire code for the amendments, I'll kind of briefly go through several highlights that we have. Most changes that we do is kind of changing code section numbers. So I'll provide some highlights that are a little bit more than that. So the first one we have is application of the California Wildland Urban Interface Code. The amendment that we're making there is basically if there's any conflict between the Wildland Urban Interface Code and the California Fire Code, the more restrictive would be those provisions would apply. We also have updated language for cost recovery for more clarity and consistency. Under access and water supply, we have remote access requirements for property requiring 2 access roads. This is going to give us some more feasibility when it's not necessarily feasible to have those 2 points of access, then the fire code official could allow it not to have the 2 points of access. There may be other ways that they can help ensure safety, so this would allow them to make that decision. No other additional changes were throughout that section. For fire protection systems, there is an exception where non-combustible fueling station canopies not exceeding 10,000 square feet do not need to be sprinklered. Basically, there's some larger places like Costco's, some Walmarts, they have larger fuel canopies. So we expanded the size. We really don't want water pouring down on fuel that could spread and cause more issues than we need to have. Some other key points on amendments that we made was to mobile fuel prep vehicles. We want to make sure that they have the proper fire protection systems in there and those systems are maintained. So basically we're talking about like food trucks and if they're frying, that they have the proper fire protection. I left in one amendment that we're doing throughout the county for fireworks. It does pertain to aerial fireworks, which I know we did the ordinance to ban the aerial fireworks even for professional shows. I wanted to leave this in here because if anything ever changed with that ordinance or council made an exception for something, we have a backup for the fallout zone. So currently we require 70 feet per inch shell for a fallout zone. We're increasing that to 100 feet. So we want to make a bigger area where people can't be standing, nothing in the way of 100 feet per shell. So say there was a 2-inch shell, they had to have 200 feet of clearance. So we wanted to expand that. And I just wanted to leave that in the code, just like I said, if anything changed with the ordinance that you recently adopted, we are covered on that. The high pile storage, sprinkler system requirements, there was no change to that. However, we moved the section it was located into a more appropriate section. And then under the appendix, we added a section for the subdivisions for the wildland urban interface area, increasing the water to 1,500 gallons per minute. Moving on to the California Wildland Urban Interface Code. Most of these sections in the beginning were amended to be consistent with the fire code language. We have a section where there's a list of permit requirements and it didn't have landscape and fuel modification zones or pallet yards, so we added it to match the California Fire Code as well. So they're all the same permits in there. Area designation and construction. One big change is in addition, is identifying the maps were adopted and the ordinance number in there, so making that clear. And then as far as the construction to Chapter 7A, more restrictive construction type, it was expanded to include the moderate zone. So anything when moderate, high, and very high needs to be brought up to the standard and more protection. There are some setback requirements for protected habitats. We don't want to have any structures within 100 feet of those protected habitats. You can't always do all of the defensible space in those protected zones, so keeping the structure a little bit further from those areas it'll be much better in the long run. However, if they do certain things in that last one, setback reductions allowed with alternative protections, it gives them ability to move a little bit closer if they do things like for example, off the top of my head, having non-combustible block walls and fencing, the reduction in exposed windows on that side, so maybe limiting the number of windows that are on the same side as that protected area, they might be able to get a little bit closer. For fire protection plans, there's a few things, and I know you guys just talked about previously about the weed abatement, so this section will kind of help with some of those questions that you had on weed abatement. But basically, fire protection plan is required for subdivisions and projects. The vegetation fuel modification mapping requirements. We want to identify proposed plants, irrigation, vegetation reduction around emergency access, things like that. So the county is actually working hard on a guideline to identify the layout for fuel modification plans, and there is a section regarding approved plants. So that is something that you can use as your previous discussion, maybe adding plants to it, because when we do defensible space, we don't go down to ground in the dirt as well, because there's erosion problems and things like that. So maybe this plant list is something that you can utilize in existing spaces to help reduce maybe more flammable plants and with the new plants that we'll have on this list for you. This section also identifies for like HOAs that they need to maintain the vegetation and the maintenance responsibilities that come with the fuel modification plans. The defensible space zones, this lays out the 3 zones. Zone 0 is 0 to 5 feet of nothing combustible, no firewood, no mulch. We have a zone 1, that's the 5 to the 30 feet. So minimal fire, smart vegetation, more defensible space. And then when you get into zone 2, which is the 30 to 50 to 100 feet, there's more breaks in the amount of trees where you don't want the canopy of the tree touching. There's more space in between, just kind of limiting the amount of vegetation, plants, and trees that are in that area. And then there's maintenance standards for all of those zones. Some other key points to point out is restrictions on firewood and combustible material storage. So we're talking about no firewood storage under decks within 30 feet of properties, having green belts with the fuel breaks for the wildland fuels and structure, so having green belts through those areas to help reduce the fire spread should there be one. Utility equipments and tower clearances, putting in requirements for water where maybe they need to have a water tank in there or other measures to help protect. We also have vegetation near energized power lines, not having vegetation directly under those lines, or height requirements, keeping distance from those as well. And then, kind of like I mentioned in the previous one, non-combustible fencing within 5 feet of structures. So we're talking our zone 0, keeping that basically hardscape. So a quick run through of what I just went over for the California Fire Code. We hit on some additional things for remote access, water requirements in the wildland urban interface areas, new standards for the food trucks as well as fireworks. Under the wildland urban interface code, having stronger vegetation management, defensible space zone requirements, setback requirements, especially from those protected habitats, and then better defined fuel modification fire protection plan requirements. All of this does, with the amendments we try to make, is protecting the residents, protecting first responders, aligning all of our standards and codes throughout the county. So if builders and contractors are going from the desert side all the way out here, they know kind of what to expect along the same lines. And all of this reduces the wildfire risk, and it definitely helps with insurance too. Being more restrictive on especially those wildland things definitely helps with the insurance side of things. And then we want to ensure resiliency, growth, and development. And that's all I have, a brief summary.
Well, good. Does council have any questions? Robin?
So there were quite a few parts of the code that were listed in the staff report.
Sure.
And I did have one, just for clarification. I know it doesn't necessarily apply to Norco, but the 15.09.37, it talks about retail fireworks. So it says that the storage, use, sale, possession, and handling of fireworks 1.4G, commonly the safe and sane, and fireworks 1.3G is prohibited. So California will no longer have safe and sane fireworks. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, so certain areas do allow for safe and sane
Right.
fireworks, so we don't want to allow the safe and sane fireworks.
Okay, so I know, so this applies only to Riverside County. There will be no more safe and sane fireworks in Riverside County, but it's not statewide. Is that
Correct.
right? Okay, very good. And then just looking at enforcement, especially like on your zones, and thinking about just Norco, what does that look like? It looked to me in reading like there's a rollout period where there's going to be some time where folks can become compliant with the urban interface and all of that, but what does enforcement look like on
Sure.
your guys' side?
Well, there's a few ways. We are going to be taking over, CAL FIRE currently does the inspections on defensible space. So if somebody goes to sell their house, they have to have a defensible space inspection. We are going to be taking on that responsibility as well. So that is one area where we will go out and make sure that, we'll list out the things for dispensable space. Most of it is doing on the new structures, so making sure the new structures are all in compliance with all of those zone requirements. There probably will be at some point a rollout for existing, but I think it's important now when we do the adoption of that, you can start getting the message out what these zones are to kind of help prepare the public for that. Maybe they're things that they can do on their own. So if you start doing more education and pushing out some of that information, that will help a lot. We do weed abatement here in Norco. We do all the vacant parcels, so we're already actively doing that, going and doing inspections twice a year. So, working with code enforcement when there's the existing issues and stuff like that.
Greg, questions?
Yeah, and this is just more clarification. I'm reading more into it.
Sure.
604-10, it says for power lines. And it says you're not allowed to plant anything under or adjacent to power lines, and we're talking about down here. And that will grow within 10 feet of the conductors. Now, we can use this against Edison, am I correct?
They are their own public utility. They have their own requirements.
So they don't
we
play by
can't-
your rules.
We can't enforce their areas, no.
I didn't
But-
mean to put you on the
yes,
spot,
sure.
but I'm just reading through there and I went, well, it's a code, but they're not subject to it.
Yes, they have their own fuel management side that they work on. They don't have to follow our rules and regulations, correct? They're a public utilities.
Yeah.
But we could do our part, at least in the areas that we're exposed to when, making sure that we're in compliance. Yes, I understand the public utilities have their own schedule. We can always put in those complaints to them and try to get them on board with trying to clear those properties, but we legally can't enforce them to do that.
Yeah, I just was curious, and I kind of knew that by the way we talked
Sure.
when we were out there on site.
Yes.
And it just amazes me is they have their own rules and they don't have to adhere to your rules, and you guys are the experts. So that's all I had.
Fia? Kevin?
The same thing about the power lines, but I already knew the answer.
Sure.
When there's a fire, when there's a fire, nothing happens. Didn't they just burn LA to the ground? Allegedly. Mulch, does that mean the little, bark and stuff like that?
Correct.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
all I have.
That we don't want within 5 feet of the home, just for spread, and wind and weather and stuff like that.
So I'm in
they can catch on
violation.
fire.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So at this point, on those items that, like on that defensible space, that's new construction today, right, going
Yes.
forward?
There's some new construction, and then there are some provisions in there for existing. We don't know what that kind of looks like quite yet. But like I mentioned, it's really good to kind of get that public education out there to try to get people to do it on their own, because all it does is really help them in the long run with insurance.
Back to, that was my one little question, on setback requirements from protected habitat. What comprises protected habitat?
Like wildlife preserves, things like that, where they're protected by the state. You can't always go in there, like maybe there's protected animals, whatever it is. There's certain times of the year that maybe they can't clear certain vegetation. So to do our part, we want to make sure that we're 100 feet from that to give that buffer for the setback.
I think we covered the other ones. May not agree with them all, but. So, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and open public comments.
I have no public comments, Mayor.
Thank you, Dana. Close public comments. And bring it back to council discussion and action. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Via.
This isn't really related to any of the changes in the code or anything like that. When I was just reading it, something caught my eye. It was talking in here about housing ambulatory children only, none of whom are mentally ill or mentally retarded. So the word retarded or the phrase mentally retarded isn't really current anymore. I was just wondering if that can be changed. I did just a little bit of research, and in 2023, there was the Dignity for All Act where it changed some of the verbiage. So that was just something I wanted to point out, if that could be changed.
Okay, anything else? Then I'll make a motion for the first reading, ordinance 1135.
Can I read title?
You may.
Thank you. This ordinance number 1135, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Norco, California, amending Norco Municipal Code Title 15, Buildings and Construction, Chapter 15.09, Fire Code, to adopt the California Wildland Urban Interface Code, WUI.
And we need it, that's the motion?
With the change.
I don't think we can make that change that Via suggested. Or,
I would agree with what Fia said. That word is, like, we've had to change everything in education already. It should be okay to
So on
change,
our-
correct?
I think it is.
Yeah.
If there's any reason why it's not consistent with the state code, and for some reason we can't do
Okay.
it for a legal reason, we'll bring that back to
So
council.
we'll make
but I
it with
think we
that
should be able
change,
to.
that verbiage. Okay, so that's the motion. Need a second. Good catch.
Please vote. Greg, did yours come up?
Yeah, I voted
Oh, there. Wait.
again.
Motion passed.
There you go.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, City Council staff communications. Dana. Alejandra. Sam. All good news. That's all I want to hear.
Community cleanup.
That's right.
Saturday, 8 to 12, bring your crap.
Be there. We'll all be there. Amanda? Okay. Let's go to the back. Lieutenant? Everything's good? All right. Chief? Chief? All right. Colin?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
What's that? Joshua? All good? Greg?
I'm good.
Robin? Via? Kevin?
Amanda, thank you so much for the Gold Star family and Mother's memorial service. That was entirely your affair. You did an excellent job. Thank you so much. You and Patrick were awesome. The release of the birds and calling Elon Musk about the rockets was just fabulous. The microphones, I don't know if you saw her throwing them through the darkness, but it was an awesome event. Thank you so much. You organized that beautifully. Thank you.
Okay. If that's it, we're going to go ahead. Thank you all very much. We're going to adjourn the meeting and go back into closed session. And there's something I forgot, but I can't remember it. Oh, that's right. There's a mental block there. Next Thursday. Yeah, and a free bus ride to Bellflower also. Everybody needs to see Amanda to sign up. That's right.